And welcome back. Now, President Cyril Ramaphosa is set to announce the outcome of discussions by the Government of National Unity on the Basic Education Laws Amendment Act, or Bela. And this was revealed by Deputy President Paul Mashatile during his address at the SACP's 5th Special National Congress that was held in the east of Johannesburg on Friday. Ramaphosa signed the act into law in September, but delayed the implementation of 2 clauses, 4 and 5, by 3 months to allow for further parliamentary discussions. Meanwhile, the South African Democratic Teachers Union, SATU, has threatened legal action if the 2 controversial clauses of the Bela Act are not signed into law. Now, to discuss this matter, we are joined virtually by the DA Federal Council Chairperson, Helen Zille. And tomorrow, of course, we will bring SATU into the conversation for their part. But today it is Ms. Zille with us. Ms. Zille, thanks so much for your time. Welcome to Morning Live.
It's good to be with you. Thank you very much.
So how would you say the discussions...
I can see it's you. I'm battling to see, but I see it's you.
Yes, it is me. Thanks so much for joining us this morning. So just in terms of the discussions around the Basic Education Laws Amendment Act, the Bela Act, in the clearinghouse, how has that gone?
I think it's gone constructively. I think everyone was doing their best to find a win-win solution. And I think there are win-win solutions on the table. We're really working very hard to make the conflict resolution mechanisms of the GNU work, because it's essential that they work if the GNU is to succeed. We're obviously not going to agree with everything the ANC wants or does, or ANC policy. After all, we opposed them in the election, and they can't govern without us now. And so what we have to do is also service our voters in the Government of National Unity, and we have to find a win-win situation for everybody.
So when it comes to the Bela Act, perhaps this is an opportunity to explain in very simple terms why the DA is objecting to clauses 4 and 5.
Well, we're objecting to clauses 4 and 5 because they are not necessary. We had clauses 5 and 6 of the South African Schools Act, which was a good act, or which were completely sufficient. I wouldn't say the South African Schools Act is any more a good act. It was when it was first enacted in 1996. I don't think it's a great act anymore, but certainly clauses 5 and 6 of the South African Schools Act covered all the bases. And those clauses have been interpreted through the courts. So those clauses have been to court a number of times, and the courts have interpreted those clauses. So there's no confusion anymore about what they mean. They mean to establish a good partnership between governing bodies and schools and parents and the broader community. And that basically is what it's supposed to do, establish a partnership. And what clauses 4 and 5 of Bela does is do away with 5 and 6 of the South African Schools Act and gives all power to the head of department, which is not right.
So just in explaining that, does it actually take away the power of the schools, or does it simply say, okay, it has to be referred to the provincial head, and at that point, what happens? Is the provincial head able to override decisions that have been taken by the school through the governing body? Please explain to us again there what the consternation is for the DA.
Yes, indeed. The new clauses of the Bela Act say that in the final instance, the head of department decides. So all the other stuff that you do beforehand, the consultation, is all a box-ticking exercise. In the end, the head of department has the final say and can override everybody else.
So If we were to assume that everything is done in a rational way, starting from the school, and decisions are taken rationally at the school level, and these decisions are then communicated to the provincial department, surely there shouldn't be any problems, should there, Ms. Zille?
Well, we're not dealing with rationality here. We've heard from what MEC Chilwani has said, we've heard from what Premier Lessufi has said repeatedly, that this is a revenge project against Afrikaans. It's a major revenge project against Afrikaans, and that is what they're doing. And we have to believe that they will do what they say they will do. Mr. Chilwani says that there's no need for a single Afrikaans-speaking school in Gauteng, meaning that he will close them all down and make sure that his head of department has the final say to prevent any Afrikaans medium school existing anymore in Gauteng. And Panyaza Lessufi says he's continuing the 1976 uprising to do away with Afrikaans, which is completely ahistorical because there is absolutely no historical precedent for this 1976 uprising to have anything to do with stopping Afrikaans as a medium of instruction. Black children, quite understandably and rightly, did not want to be taught through the medium of Afrikaans, but they did not want to get rid of Afrikaans as a language of instruction. And now many Afrikaans parents and children do not want to be taught through the medium of English. And according to the Constitution, having mother tongue education is a right where it is practicable. And in fact, in the Afrikaans community, in the deaf community, it's highly practicable. And what we need to be working on, and what SATU needs to be working on, is to make it accessible and practicable for all the other languages as well, rather than just fighting a revenge project against Afrikaans.
So, I cannot speak in any way, shape or form for what is alleged to have been said by the MEC for Education in Gauteng, or the Premier for that matter. But as per the Act, Ms. Zille, where does the Act make provision for such? Where does the Act actually empower anybody to get rid of Afrikaans?
Well, it does, because it basically says that the head of department has the final say on language policy and that they can force a change of language policy at a school.
But what would that mean practically? And this is what I've been battling to understand. So are we saying that, let's say, for example, SABC High, if this is a school. So if this school, the language policy at the school is Afrikaans, my understanding was that it would simply mean that there would be provision for English classes to exist, even though the school would predominantly be an Afrikaans medium school. Is that not what it intends to do?
Well, intention and what happens are two entirely different things. So we've seen that at schools where there has been parallel medium streams, the school has very quickly become only English. Same thing at universities. Stellenbosch used to be an Afrikaans-speaking university in a majority Afrikaans-speaking province, with a majority of Afrikaans speakers who are not white. And Stellenbosch also said they were going to get a parallel medium program going, English and Afrikaans. Well, of course, now it's only English. Exactly the same thing at the University of the Free State, exactly the same thing at the University of Pretoria. Basically, it's used as a means of eradicating Afrikaans.
And see, Ms. Zille, I don't understand that, because surely that same act then empowers Afrikaans-speaking parents to ensure that there is a space for their children in the same school.
The point is that it becomes unbelievably difficult on the subsidy available to run a parallel medium school with everything in two languages and double sets of teachers and stuff. It doesn't work. It's never worked anywhere. Obviously, anybody who speaks Afrikaans, whatever their race, whatever their color, they are most warmly welcome in those schools. This has nothing to do with race. As I said, the majority of Afrikaans-speaking people are not white in South Africa. So the bottom line is this: are we going to protect the right to mother tongue education, to defend language and culture of endangered groups? Are we going to do that for isiZulu? Are we going to do that for isiXhosa? Are we going to do that for Sesotho, Setswana, all of those languages? And I think we should. That's what the Constitution requires us to do. There are 95 English medium schools for every one Afrikaans medium school. And their numbers are falling very fast because of a dual medium policy that eventually and very soon eradicates Afrikaans.
But the reality
and when the
is,
MEC says we want to eradicate Afrikaans, you better believe him.
but Ms. Zille, we have had dual medium schools exist for the longest time. I went to school during the apartheid years, and even then there were dual medium schools where even though the majority of the children were Afrikaans home language, there were 1 or 2 English medium classes that were well, catered for, and it worked perfectly. So to say that, there is no such successful model, I would like to question that, because I think it has been done, it has been successfully done, and even today.
It is successfully done if Afrikaans can remain the majority language. 9 times out of 10, it can't. So I went to a dual medium school as well, a dual medium primary school, very poor school. It was built out of corrugated iron. We had bucket toilets. Most of the kids didn't have shoes. I was lucky enough to have shoes. A very, very poor school in the platteland of Gauteng at the time. And that worked well because it was 90% Afrikaans, I would say. But there was never a risk that there would be a demand for 90% English. And that is the problem. The language gets eradicated, especially if you look at the wording of the Act and what has to happen there. But above all, you've got to listen to what Panyaza Lesufi says and to what Chilwani says.
No, but
if
Mazilla,
they say this is to get rid of Afrikaans, you better believe them.
No, but they don't speak for all of South Africa. And as I say, I cannot even corroborate, what was said by either of them. But to the point of eradicating Afrikaans, surely that is not possible. There are too many Afrikaans-speaking people in this country, the majority of whom are not even white South Africans. So surely there will be enough protection for the language in the country.
Well, if you stop teaching a language and if it stops being a language of education, it quickly unravels.
But how is it going to stop? Because I'm looking at a situation whereby, for example, you live in an area where the school is an Afrikaans medium school. And you're saying, well, yes, this is an Afrikaans medium school, but there are in this very same area a number of English-speaking children. Can't we accommodate the English children in a class in this predominantly Afrikaans-speaking school? Is that not what the Act is intending to do?
No, not at all. If you look at the definitions in the Act, they say that it has to conform to the language of people in the education district. Now, the education district is huge. It's massive. And there won't be an education district anywhere in South Africa, except perhaps in the Northern Cape, where the majority of people speak Afrikaans.
So how then, to date, have Afrikaans medium schools managed to exist and remain Afrikaans first language?
Because the laws allowed them to.
But the same law will still apply, won't it?
No, it's being amended in such a way as to not allow it.
But if that argument then, Mazilla, could be made for any language in South Africa. You mentioned earlier, isiZulu, isiXhosa, whatever other language, the same argument can then be made.
Yes.
And surely that is not what is envisaged for the country.
It is. If you read the Constitution, Section 29, for example, go and read it.
The Constitution?
Yes. If people want mother tongue education, it has to be provided where it is practicable to do so. Now, Afrikaans speakers have made huge advances in turning Afrikaans into an academic language from the lowest levels of pre-primary right up till postdoctoral levels. And they've made all that effort and written dictionaries and done whatever. The deaf community has also done a fantastic amount of work to make South African Sign Language a language of instruction. And I take my hat off to the deaf community because they have said this is our mother tongue. We want education in our mother tongue, and we're going to make the effort to have it. And they first had to have a battle to make sure that their mother tongue was recognized as an official language of South Africa. And I fully support that. Look what they've done. They've really done an enormous amount of work. Now, for every one Afrikaans-speaking school, there are 95 English-speaking schools. So in any education district, anyone, except perhaps in the Northern Cape where almost everybody speaks Afrikaans, the number of English-speaking schools will far outnumber the Afrikaans-speaking schools. And it's not too much to say that having built those up through the Afrikaans-speaking community, they should be allowed to keep Afrikaans mother tongue education. And then we can really focus on what we're supposed to be focusing on, which is not destroying the Afrikaans medium schools, but building up mother tongue in other languages too.
All right. And you know, I think that is a question that will be debated for the longest time in terms of what you say, destroying the Afrikaans medium schools, because I'm not sure what that means, you know, what that implies in terms of
what that implies is they stop being Afrikaans medium. That's what it implies.
So if
That's all it implies.
So Mzila, is this not about South Africa making sure that all children are able to access schools in their communities, regardless of which language they speak? Because we have 12 official languages in this country, and every child speaking any of those languages should be accommodated.
Yes, absolutely. But for every place there's an Afrikaans school, there'll be an English school as well.
Yes, but if the English school is 20 kilometers away, why can't provision be made for those children in what is an Afrikaans medium school?
I think provision should be made for them in Afrikaans. Absolutely. Remember that whole outcry in Schweizer many years ago? There they made provision for Afrikaans-speaking children. I think they said Tswana-speaking. They made provision for Afrikaans-speaking children, for Tswana-speaking children in the Afrikaans school, but they had to learn to integrate and be part of the Afrikaans school, and then they retain Afrikaans.
So exactly that. Where Afrikaans-speaking children need to be accommodated in predominantly English-speaking schools, that should happen as well.
Yes, indeed.
So we're not disagreeing on that score. And again, as I say...
If anybody in the education feeder zone wants to attend school in Afrikaans, they must be allowed to.
Absolutely. But Mzila, we are out of time. I quickly want to ask you. So
yeah,
this act has, of course, sparked heated discussion among the GNU members as well. So what would be the implication to the GNU should there be a failure to reach consensus on this particular matter?
Well, we'll have to wait for the president. I don't want to leapfrog the process. The president will have to look at the report, which is very detailed and very thorough. And then the president will have to take a step that is rational in law. And we will help make sure that he does.
And if the step he takes is not rational in law, according to what you view that to be, are you taking this to court?
Well, it's not what we view it to be, it's what our lawyers view it to be. And we may take it to court, we may take more drastic action, but I don't want to leapfrog the process, as I said. I don't want to leapfrog the process and run ahead of what the president is likely to say.
We are out of time, Ms. Helen Zille. Thanks so much. Always a pleasure speaking to you. Dr. Maluleka, we spoke to the DA's federal chairperson, Helen Zille, yesterday about the latest developments around the Bela Act. Now, SATU has threatened legal action around those two controversial clauses that have been put in suspension, so to speak, and Friday was the deadline. That has now passed. So where does SATU stand now with regard to the Bela Act and what needs to happen moving forward?
We are busy with our legal counsel preparing papers to file them early January, because for now the court is in recess, and so that we would want the court to compel the president to promulgate the date for the implementation of clauses 4 and 5. So we are in that particular process.
Which is interesting in itself because, as you say, now you want the court to compel the president to move on this matter. SATU, of course, an affiliate of COSATU, which is a part of the tripartite alliance with the ANC and, of course, the South African Communist Party. Has there been no discussion among the members of the tripartite alliance? Because there was deliberation around this matter, at least among some members of the GNU. I would imagine that given the seriousness of it all, the tripartite alliance itself would have also deliberated on this.
The tripartite alliance has been left out of the discussions. If you could remember very well, there were some discussions which were secret at the level of NEDLAC. We are the convener of Labour constituency in NEDLAC as COSATU, but we were not even informed around that particular process. We only knew when the so-called agreement was signed. So the tripartite alliance has not been involved. Hence, you have had the Communist Party during the weekend has taken a decision to support SATU's legal action as well as the industrial action on the first day of reopening of a school in January 2025.
So let's talk about those deliberations at NEDLAC, because there were quite a few questions around that. As you say, as the conveners, you were left out of the fold. So what does that then mean for the standing, legal or otherwise, of those deliberations at NEDLAC?
In law, we believe that those agreements do not have any force and effect, as we believe that this is a process that the president has a prerogative to sign into law any legislation, and therefore there was no need for that. But we told it was to avert a strike. Of course, it's something that we laugh at because solidarity has got no force in education to the extent that it could have even impacted on education or any disruption whatsoever. So clearly it is that what we cannot do as SATU, though, whilst these particular agreements, we believe that it has got no force or effect in education, we do not want to sleep. Because once we fatigue as an organization, what's going to happen is that the president would come back to us and say, look, you guys have said nothing. The other parties have now an agreement, and this particular agreement says the act must be implemented 2026, so therefore I will implement that. So we're not going to sleep.
As things stand right now, Dr. Maluleke, what is your understanding of the consternation or what it is that the Democratic Alliance and Solidarity and others who are opposed to the implementation of Clauses 5 are concerned about? What do you understand their concern to be?
Well, first and foremost, I must indicate that the fears and the worries that are so unfounded. The first was to really, demonize this particular bill by bringing things that were never in the bill before. And now that the bill has been, or the act is now signed, all of a sudden we're being told that they want to support mother tongue learning. Of course, all of us support mother tongue learning, but let me make it very clear to you, it is not about supporting mother tongue learning. It is supporting, separate development. It is to say, go and build a school for Setswana, go and build a school for Xitsonga. Don't integrate our education system. Don't bring your children to our schools because they are going to impact on our culture. They are going to impact on our language. They are going to lower the standard. That is the real issue here. It's about deracialization. It's about integration, which they don't want. They are saying they want African schools. So you cannot have in a country where the constitution, based on Section 9, is a constitution that is based on the Bill of Rights to then say people of this country are a nation and not ethnic groups or racial groups. But you keep on saying there's an African school. So that is the issue, is that they don't want to have their children mixed with other races. They want purity. So that is what they're saying. You bring black children, they're going to lower the standard here. You bring them, they're going to affect our culture. We want our culture to remain African's culture. And so we're a multicultural, we're a multiracial, we're a multilingual society. And we have this diversity as a heritage, which we believe we need to be able to work together, live together.
In speaking to Helen Zille yesterday from the DA, she basically expressed the concern around Afrikaans possibly being eradicated as a result of the upward referral, so to speak, to the provincial department when it comes to decisions that have already been taken around language and admission policy at schools. Is that something that could possibly happen? Is there anything in the Act that could possibly turn out to a situation where Afrikaans as a language would come under threat?
No, Afrikaans is protected just like any other language is protected. It's unfortunate that the indigenous languages have not been protected up until this day, but Afrikaans, English, they're protected because in the Act, nothing that threatens. That's why I say these allegations or these fears are really unfounded. They are baseless. The only thing is that people don't want to integrate because nothing in the Act that says the head of department can say you cannot teach Afrikaans. Here we must face the facts. When learners or the schools admit other learners from other racial groups, what the Afrikaners are doing, they take the children out. So at the end of the day, you find that the school has got white teachers, but there are no white children because the white children have been taken to a folk school somewhere that is built on a farm. So they move all the time, they move away from this particular school without anybody threatening them. The threat they have is that they don't want to integrate with other races.
With regard to the protection of languages, and you say that other indigenous languages have not been protected, please explain that to us. And perhaps this is another fear that compounds the concerns that those around Afrikaans are centered around would speak to. So what do you mean by the lack of protection for indigenous languages?
One, what happened since 1994, it is that the other African languages would not have the freedom to choose that I want my kid to be taught in Sepedi from grade 1 up to grade 12. And there was no investment by the government to ensure that they are this research around these particular languages and so forth, so that they are strengthened and they brought to the level of Afrikaans and English. And therefore, that's what we are saying. Now that we want to make sure that the community itself protects their languages by making sure that they participate in a democratic process where finally they will say, this is the language policy of our school. And bringing in the community is because you also want to say, you are a school here, you serve the community, you don't only have a single language. You might have people speaking Sepedi, other people speaking Xhosa, but you need to determine in terms of the number of learners that are there in that particular community and then be able to say, this is going to be a parallel English, Afrikaans, or Sesotho, or is going to be a bilingual and so forth. So you're bringing that democratization of our schools so that you also protect these other languages that have not been protected because it was only English and Afrikaans. But the two dominant languages are not threatened, and the new languages that will also be introduced will not be threatened because it is now going to be the community that takes that decision to say, we want our school to be able to use these two languages or three languages. For example, myself as a principal, my school has 5 languages. And it's because I had to introduce Tswana and Setsonga, which were not there in that area because Soshanguve was not supposed to teach Setswana. But we have got Setswana learners, and then we had to introduce it. It was not a difficult thing to teach. The only thing is the threat was that we didn't have books. We did not have the support in terms of research because our languages were not developed to the level of English and Afrikaans. But this Act is promoting that now, and we are happy about it.
And then we're out of time, Mr. Maluleke, but I quickly have to ask you, so following these deliberations, the matter, of course, in the hands of the president, what's the next step? What should the president do, and what will you be doing as SADTU?
One, we think the president should not find himself in an operational area of listening to fears that are not there, that are unfounded. The president must just promulgate the act, and then we will deal with what we're supposed to deal with. And then any other person who's not happy, like we're not happy if the president does not do that, that's why we're going to court. That's why we'll use our industrial action. And we don't want to threaten somebody and say, no, we'll pull out of what? We're just doing follow the act. So we are following the law. We are going to go to court. And then we are also going to, support our court action by a strike on the first day of the reopening of schools in January.
Well, Dr. Maluleke, thank you so much for your time.